Solverse, Grand Fleet Santa, by eddieddi. Minutes from Federation Council Meeting 6939, last meeting of the solar cycle before breaking for the Renewal Festival. Report to the Federation Council on Human Propaganda from the Social Master Grand High. Humanity has been rather persistent with its propaganda over the past few months, broadcasting on almost all spectrums messages of peace, prosperity, kindness, and family, even while it is putting pressure on the outer edges of the wild space used by pirates and continuing to apply pressure to the Zurzak Empire with continued military raids. The strange factor unifying most of these propaganda messages are the presence of a decorated arboreal creature, suspected to be slain as part of some ritual hunt. There's also the exchanging of gifts and gathering of families. This all takes place during what for most of the human home planet is the cold season. We expect this to be something to do with the fact that humans prefer to remain inside during this time, unless it is to take part in almost suicidal activities that involve hurtling down a mountain at unreasonably high speeds. While this is a human tradition, as our research has shown, it is also likely made use of as a tactical form of propaganda to display humanity as a peaceful and kind society despite its continued Minute Taker's notes. It is at this point the High Military Commander entered the Council Chamber against protocol and risking termination. High Military Commander: I have an urgent report for the Council. There are over 6,000 human coalition fleets requesting access, over half of them military, and Pestilence is among them. There are also over 80,000 human trade and civilian ships that have just jumped into Federation space without license or request. 2 months earlier, aboard the flagship Azerial of the Heavenly Host Assault Fleet, the Commander Gabriel looked at the three ensigns and sighed. So let me get this straight. You were caught planning to steal one of the Sephirim laddercraft and go. He paused to look at the report he was given. Gift giving and spreading holiday cheer in the form of care packages across Federation space. There was a collective shuffling of feet from the offending troopers, and suppressed giggles across the bridge. The commander rubbed his temples. You cannot just go joyriding in one of our assault lighters across Federation space, let alone drop unknown care packages to random worlds. What do you think would have happened if you dropped something that was toxic to the local populace? He tossed the data slate containing the report to one of the side tables. You need to plan these things, not to mention a single lighter might get shot down. You need an escort. The three ensigns looked more confused than before. Well, go on, get off my bridge and get to station. It seems we need to make a pit stop at Satellite Earth. He turned back to the crew. Contact Sacred Gate Station. Forward our revised flight plan to the Terran High Command. And someone send a message to the Morning Star and Odinson. They'll both want in on this. And contact Davy Jones. This is right up his alley. Any other commanders stupid or insane enough to think this is a good idea? He asked the bridge at large. There was a pause as there was some consideration. After a moment, one of the communications officers spoke up. Maybe, sir. This seems something like Arthur and his lot might be up for. The commander nodded. Alright, then send a signal to Camelot Station. See if Arthur and the Knights are up for a little crusade. It didn't take long for messages to be passed about. While some organizations opposed this blatant misuse of military power, the slow-growing support from the civilian population, and the fact that 4 of the largest fleets, as well as the most powerful and versatile raiding fleet, had committed to the action regardless of orders, meant that the High Command had little choice but to give Operation Let It Snow the green light. The problem, however, was not only the scale of the operation, but the amount of logistical problems. Specific species could or could not have specific things. How would they know what to do with it? The list went on, and as more problems were presented, more people were brought on to work on the operation. Eventually the story got out, and then there was no stopping it. It spread like wildfire. Humanity was bringing Christmas to the Federation. News agencies were told they were not allowed to run segments on the upcoming operation. However, they were encouraged to play lots of Christmas propaganda directed at the Federation. How to build snowmen, the rules for snowball fights, snow angels for each species, and even various Christmas movies. Larger extranet forums started discussions on how to build various species of snow aliens, with guides and pictures. Instructions on how to decorate a tree and what it was for. Ambassadors to the Federation denied any knowledge of the operation and told their contacts within the Federation that this was totally normal. Humans just like this time of year, and it was a celebration, like the Renewal Festival. When it came time to assemble the fleet, officially designated Superfleet Alpha 7, however, most of the crew and commanders had taken to calling it Fleet Santa. The military was astounded. Not only did the designated military ships arrive, but so did almost a full quarter of the human-captained civilian ships. The final word in the scale of the operation, however, was when Pestilence left its defensive orbital position around Earth to join the fleet. The Horsemen were granted relative autonomy compared to most other military fleets, permitted to grant their assistance to any military operation the captains deemed suitable. However, this was a nigh upon unheard of occurrence. They mostly remained guarding the Sol system and Earth itself. No one has asked the captain of the supership to join them. No one had even asked if the Horsemen were to be involved. It was just assumed that they would remain at station, as they always had. Present day, the fleet hung arrayed across in the void, a few hundred kilometers from the invisible line that marked the edge of human and Federation space. Hulls that not only carried ammunition, weapons, and high explosives, now loaded with crates upon crates of food, toys, games, data slates loaded with stories and novels. It was a tense situation. They were for the function of stellar combat, unarmed. Ammunition stores had been swapped out for more storage, for even more presence. The only ship that was still combat capable was Pestilence, and that was due to her immense size and role within the operation. Their protection against pirates was a threat that such a large fleet presented, and the goodwill of humanity. Messages bounced back and forth. Civilian freighters had skipped the line and gone straight to their objective planets. Eventually, the call was made. A small transport shuttle, owned by a private merchant outfit, decided that the consequences be damned. Christmas was happening, no matter where one was in the galaxy. The shuttle fired up its engines and crossed the border. Then another shuttle. Then the bigger freighters moved. It didn't take long until the fleet was moving. Inside the Federation Council chamber, it was anarchy. There were peace accords, an alliance. Why would the humans attack? And with a horseman no less. It wasn't until a second messenger arrived with a letter from every human ambassador within Federation space. The council was confused. Messages were sent by extranet or to be delivered in person verbally. This was irregular. They knew humans communicated by letter sometimes, but that was for interpersonal relationships. Treaties were also signed on hard storage. Was this some strange mass demand for surrender? The council demanded that the messenger open one of them up. So, at random, she did, reading it out loud for the council to hear. The front says, "Peace and goodwill to all." It appears to have a picture of some kind of small building with a star. It appears to open so it can be propped up, as if to display itself. There's nothing inside but a message. The council insisted she read on, still under the impression this was some kind of trick. The inside reads, "To the Federation High Council, I hope this card finds you well. Christmas wishes, and enjoy the gifts. Best regards, Ambassador for Agriculture and Farming, Alexander. P.S. The fleet is bringing gifts." The messenger looked up at the council members, who looked at each other in shock. There was a sudden flurry of activity as the council members forgot their standing and moved to the floor of the chamber and started opening the messages. All of them were very similar, folded, reinforced paper with some messages of happiness or goodwill on the front and various depictions of all kinds of things, from trees to smiling old men in strange hats. All of them also had very similar messages, wishing the council and the entire Federation well and insisting the fleet had no intention of harming the Federation. Eventually, it was decided the council would visit one of the human ambassadors to demand an answer. In the void of space, the flotilla of ships that had by now officially designated itself in the humanities records as Grand Fleet Santa had arrayed itself and jumped to FTL. Each ship had a destination. Each ship's cargo was specifically selected for the species of the target planet. Pestilence, however, had another objective. The Horsemen jumped from one Federation system to the next, deploying drones in each. Bjorn Odinson sat in the command chair. The man was the largest commander of the Seer fleet to date, almost 7 feet tall and built like a tank. His elevation to commander had resulted in the command chair needing to be replaced to suit his size. Rather than his normal uniform, he wore a bright red outfit with fluffy cuffs. He had even dyed his normally ginger beard white. The whole ensemble was capped off by what sat on top of his head. Rather than a normal soft cap of command, sat a bright red Santa hat, the pom-pom at the end flashing on and off with internal light. "Alright, let's show the Federation what Christmas means. Set course, the orbit, match location with the primary city. Deploy the jingle bombers." He sounded like he was enjoying this, far more than he had any right to. The command bridge, however, did their best to suppress giggles and follow the orders. All across the Federation, Military outposts were in a state of disarray. Humanity's ships were pouring over the borders and checkpoints without regard for protocol or for custom checks, all while broadcasting a disorientating combination of rescue ship codes, cheery human music, and wishes of good health and joy to anyone who could hear them. Outpost 7 Delta 6 received a request to dock from a human cargo ship. Confused and unsure of what to do, the commanding officer approved the request, just so they could ask the humans what was going on. He suspected this was some kind of strange psychological warfare or something. Two of his underlings insisted that it was nothing but good news, citing some obscure extranet forum they were a part of. What the commander didn't expect was that his underlings were correct. The human cargo ship docked and instantly began to offload cargo. The commander was handed a small box wrapped in some kind of shiny paper. Flustered and out of his depth when he was told that it was his and he should open it by one of the crew members, he did so, only to be greeted with a box full of crystallized honey. For his species, the substance was a natural high that was sold with strict tariffs and quite a high price. The commander stuttered and attempted to hand the box back, only for the human crew to laugh at him and insist that he keep it. It was a gift, from humanity to him. Every other member of the station was sought out and handed boxes. These ranged from small boxes of crystallized honey to collections of the latest human-produced video games. The human ship's engineer handed over a comparatively huge crate to the station's engineering team. The crate, it turned out, was full of custom-made toolboxes that followed the owner around and were voice-activated to hand over the precise tool asked for. The station's crew was shocked and perplexed, and became even more confused when the humans began to set up a large table and cover it in food. The two underlings took the time to explain what they'd seen on the extranet forum and what they'd been told by the humans. This was a celebration of kindness and family amongst humans, to be shared with friends and competitors, of gift-giving and receiving, and of joy in food. The commander of the station took his time to evaluate the situation, ensuring that the food the humans had set out was not toxic to the species, almost consuming the entire supply of cranberry sauce in the process. Finally accepting this was not some kind of trick, the station master ordered that the station be put on low power and for the crew to join the human messengers in the cargo bay for Christmas dinner. This scene was being repeated all across Federation space, stations being hailed and docked with. On the planets, however, shuttles and lighter craft were dropping care packages, using technology that humanity had mastered in the 20th century to deliver species-specific gifts all across Federation space. Some crates were labeled as for younglings, containing children toys, bedtime stories, and other child-friendly substances. Some were for everyone, containing species-wide gifts, data slates with subscriptions to various media companies, prepaid for the year, huge collections of family and board games. There were crates for adults, loaded with food, mild intoxicants for specific species, collections of human movies loaded onto the data slates. Then the drones from Pestilence entered the atmosphere. Deploying clouds of nanites into the atmosphere over inhabited areas, the nanites bonded together and made use of atmospheric chemicals to produce various forms of snow that would be harmless to the inhabitants of the planet. Suddenly, all across the Federation, it was snowing. Presents falling from the sky and wishes of goodwill and joy were being broadcast from every human ship. It was the children who first understood. Having been bombarded with adverts and stories from human media companies, they suddenly understood. It was Christmas. At first, it was just the children. Then the adults grew curious and got involved. Species that had never seen a human were having their first snowball fights, building snow humans or snow aliens. On the Federation capital world, the council was marching through the streets toward Ambassador Alexander's residence while this was happening. Having left in a hurry, their aides were still trying to collect the required data slates and information for such a visit. The council members reached the gated and guarded ambassador's residence. The two burly guards looked at the council as if demanding to know why they dared to come without forewarning or an invite. The lead council member drew himself up to the full 3 meters of height that his trichol form offered, ready to demand entrance and explanation, only to suddenly deflate as the gate was flung open by Ambassador Alexander, dressed in a strange gown, soft shoes with no back, and a red floppy hat, a glass of some red liquid in his hand.
"Ah, council members, I was not expecting guests today. Come in! There should be some turkey left, and I'm sure we can find some spare wine,"
he said as he waved them down the path to his house. This was not what they were expecting. They were expecting the normally blustery pontificating ambassador of agriculture and farming, not the cheery half-dressed man they had encountered. They had only been inside the ambassador's house a few times, and never all together, often only meeting in the specifically designated side room. This time, however, they were ushered through the house and into a large, comfortable-looking room. A huge tree dominated one corner with a crackling fire in the hearth of one wall. Sat on a sofa was a woman, the ambassador's wife, who looked a little stunned at the sudden arrival of the 12 highest and most powerful creatures in the Federation. The tiny human on her lap, however, had no such qualms, pointing and clapping at the newcomers. The tiny human made a noise of surprise and joy at the new creatures they could see. The noises grew louder and more excited with each new creature that filtered into the room. The third occupant of the room, a moody-looking human who was in the transition state between child and adult, looked at his father entering the room and sighed.
"What now, Dad?"
The last word was elongated with frustration, though the annoyance and apparent boredom fell away when the council members filed into the room.
"What now, kiddo? We've got guests! Go see if we got any bottles of fizz left."
The ambassador turned to his wife. "Dear, past Samantha here, could you get some leftovers for our honored guests?" he asked, and took the tiny human off his wife and turned back to the council members. Hours passed, things were explained, food and drink were passed around. The council members found themselves seated about the room, each with a plate of food and a drink of some kind. The Trico council member, a 3.5-meter monster of armor plating and battle scars, found itself the favorite climbing frame of the ambassador's daughter, who he discovered was barely 2 cycles old. The other council members were shocked to see the normally stoic and taciturn Trico council member become a doting and caring creature, looking carefully after the tiny human. The human ambassador insisted they all call him Alex, and sat teaching several of the council member card games on the floor, while the ambassador's son played video games with the Korsk and Ordine council members. The ambassador's wife, who'd introduced herself as Annie, sat overseeing the whole thing, aided by the Scythian council member, who it turned out had a keen interest in human crafting hobbies, and so was getting a lesson on the correct way to knit a pair of socks. And so, Christmas had come to the Federation. Next year, they'd have presents of their own to give humanity in return.